When my son's bride called me an embarrassment and asked me to leave, I picked up my bag quietly, but when the priest announced who paid for the wedding, everyone screamed. My name is Linda Parker. I am 56 years old, a diner manager in Columbus, Ohio, and a single mom. I raised my son, Nathan, everyone calls him Nate, by working double shifts, keeping tips in a coffee can, and saying yes to every extra hour. We did not have much, but we had peace. I always told him, be kind. Do the right thing even when no one claps. He believed me. He grew up strong, tall, gentle. When he got his first real job in tech, he hugged me so tight I could feel his heartbeat through my work apron. He promised he would take care of me the way I had taken care of him. I said I didn't need that. I just wanted him to be happy. The first time I met his fiancée, Madison Whitfield, I tried my best to like her. She was pretty, blown-out hair, perfect teeth, strong perfume. She came from a different world, private schools, country clubs, the kind of Christmas cards that look like magazine covers. Her mother, Victoria, shook my hand without really holding it the way you touch a doorknob you don't want to turn. Her smile was the type that sat on top of her face, never reaching her eyes. It was fine. Not everyone knows how to be warm. I told myself not to judge, but I am not here to tell you about first impressions. I am here to tell you about the moment my son's bride called me an embarrassment and told me to leave, and what happened when the priest announced who paid for the wedding, and the whole church screamed. It happened like this. The organ was still echoing off the high white ceiling. Sunlight fell through the stained glass and painted Madison's veil the color of sherbet. The church smelled like lilies and old wood. Guests whispered and shifted, and I sat at the end of a pew near the aisle, clutching my small blue purse. I had taken the bus before dawn to have my hair rolled and my nails done. I wore a navy dress that fit me well and shoes that did not. My knees ached, but my heart was steady. I had never felt so proud. Then Madison turned her face toward me, only me, and smiled the coldest smile I have ever seen. She leaned slightly, still holding my son's hands, and spoke through her teeth, her voice so low only the first 2 rows could hear. Can someone move her? She nodded at me as if I were a coat hanging on the wrong chair. This is embarrassing. My family is watching. Please make her leave. My ears rang. The usher beside the pew looked at me. A few heads turned like weather vanes in a wind. Someone coughed. My son's jaw tightened, but he did not speak. Not yet. The photographer froze halfway to the aisle, his camera hanging from his neck like a weight. I felt my face go hot, then cold. I reached for my bag with a hand that was suddenly 80 years old. "Ma'am," whispered the usher at my elbow, shame in his eyes that did not belong to him. Maybe we can move you to the back." "No," Madison said, still smiling. "Not the back. Out." She blinked 4 times, slow and hard, like she was pushing tears back for show. "I can't have this right now." So I stood. I picked up my bag, quietly, the way you pick up your shoes when a baby is sleeping. I nodded. I even smiled. There is a kind of pain you learn after years of hard work, how to fold it small and put it in your pocket. I stepped into the aisle. "Before we continue," the priest said, clearing his throat, his voice traveling the length of the church and bouncing off old carvings and long memories, "I need to name someone. It is important." He looked down at his notes. "The person who paid for today's wedding. Every flower, every seat, every bite you will eat. Asked to stay quiet until this moment." There was a sound in the church. It was not a word. It was the sound a crowd makes when it leans forward together. My hand tightened around the strap of my bag. Madison turned her head toward the priest, her smile glued in place. Victoria's smile sharpened, as if it expected to hear her own name. The person who paid for this wedding is. The priest said the name, and the church screamed. Now, before I tell you the name you heard, I have to tell you how we got there. How a woman like me ended up paying for a wedding like this. How kindness and quiet sacrifice turned into a weapon no one saw coming. If I give it to you all at once, you will think it fell from the sky. It didn't. It was built dollar by dollar, night by night, tear by tear. Nate met Madison at a summer fundraiser her father's company hosted. He called me after, his voice bright like it used to be, when he got perfect attendance in 3rd grade. "Mom, I think I met my person," he said. "She listens when I talk. She likes the same movies. She laughs at my dumb jokes." I put my hand over the receiver and told the empty kitchen, "Thank you, God, because I wanted so badly for love to be kind to my son." The first dinner was at a modern restaurant where the chairs looked like art and the plates looked like tiny stages. I wore a cream sweater and my best lipstick. Madison's father, Charles, was quiet and gentle. He asked me about the diner, and for a minute I forgot his cufflinks probably cost more than my car. Madison's mother said she loved how resilient single mothers can be, then asked whether Nate's father was still in the picture. I said he passed when Nate was 6. She said, "Oh, in the tone people use for weather reports they didn't plan on." There were small things after that, little stones that did not bruise until they piled up. Madison took pictures in my kitchen, but never tagged Nate. She called my meatloaf authentic, like it was a costume. When I asked if I could help with the wedding planning, she said, "Oh, we'll keep it simple," and then booked a venue that looked like a castle. One night, after a 12-hour shift, Nate came by the diner and slid into the booth across from me. He played with the salt shaker and would not meet my eyes. "They think it might be better if the ceremony is more refined," he said. "Maddie's mom asked about, seating. She has a big family flying in. It's complicated." "What's complicated?" I asked. He swallowed. "They want you near the back so the photographers can focus on the VIP rows." "But, Mom, it's only for the look of the photos. It's not about you." He was saying, "It's not you, it's the picture of you." I looked at my son and saw a boy who had carried his science fair volcano on the bus because I could not leave my shift. I saw a teen who took 2 buses to school so I could keep the car. I saw a young man with clean hands trying to do right by everyone and getting cut in the middle. I nodded. "If that makes things easier, baby," I said, "it's your day." He reached for my hand, his eyes glassy. "It's our day," he said. "I'm going to talk to them." He did talk to them. Things got smoother for a while. I met the wedding planner, a woman named Brooke, with kind eyes and a clipboard she treated like a second heart. She thanked me for being involved and meant it. I helped where I could without stepping on toes. When they debated cake flavors like it was foreign policy, I smiled and said, "Why not both?" At home, I kept moving. I did not tell anyone what I was about to do. I pulled out the coffee can that had once held coins and now held folded bills and old dreams. I added the envelope I had not touched since the accident, the small insurance payout I had kept for one day. I took extra shifts. I sold the pearl earrings my mother left me. The plan formed the way bread rises. Slow, quiet, inevitable. I was going to give my son a gift that said, "You do not need to ask anyone's permission to belong here." I called Brooke the planner and asked if we could talk alone. We met at a bakery that smelled like sugar and warm metal. She stirred her coffee, watching me cautiously, like a nurse waiting to hear a symptom before deciding whether to call the doctor. "I'd like to cover the wedding," I said, my voice wobbling on the word like it was a tightrope. "All of it, but there are conditions. I don't want the Whitfields to know it's me. I don't want my son to know either. until the priest announces it during the blessing. Not at the start, not at the rehearsal, at the blessing. I want it to be for both families, not against one. No showboating, just truth at the right time. Brooke put her spoon down. "Mrs. Parker," she whispered, as if the bakery had turned into a church. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said. "If it blows up, let it blow up with honesty." She nodded slowly. "We can route payments through my office. I'll label the invoices for an anonymous sponsor. I'll inform Father Thomas. He's discreet." She hesitated. "It's a lot of money." "It's a lot of love," I said. We set it up. Every week I slid another envelope across a table. Brooke sent me receipts and updates. The florist cried when she learned the budget was suddenly wider. The caterer added a second entree. The string quartet added a song Nate loved as a child. No one knew the hand behind it. I did not want their thanks. I wanted my son and his bride to begin without debt, and without the Whitfields treating every line item like a leash. From the outside, I kept smiling. I complimented Madison's dress. I listened when she said the napkins should be a different white than the tablecloths. I prayed for my own heart to stay soft. I tried, really tried, to love her. But kindness is not weakness, and patience has a spine. I can be quiet a long time. I cannot be erased. The week of the wedding, things got strange again. At the rehearsal dinner, the Whitfields' family friend gave a toast that felt like a warning. "To our new son," he said to Nate, "and to our dear Madison, who is making a wonderful match." He did not say my son's last name. He did not look at me. Later that night, when I walked past their table, I heard Victoria telling someone, "We've handled the costs." Of course we have. It's our responsibility. No one else could. She said it loud, like a radio turned up near an open window. I looked at Brooke. She gave me the smallest shake of her head. Not yet. The next morning, wedding day, the air felt like it does before a storm, heavy and too quiet. I put on my navy dress, the one I bought without telling a soul, because it made me stand up straighter. I pinned my hair back, dabbed perfume on the inside of my wrists, and tucked a handkerchief into my purse. I held my phone, but did not call anyone. I did not want words. I wanted the day to be good. The venue was a bright white church with pews that had held families for 100 years. Outside, a string of black SUVs let people out like beads dropping from a broken necklace. I walked up the steps, my knees humming at each rise, and smiled at the usher holding the door. He checked the tablet in his hand. "Name?" he asked. "Linda Parker," I said, "mother of the groom." His face changed in 1 second. It went from hello to problem. He tapped the tablet again and again as if it could learn a new answer by being hit. "I'm sorry, Miss Parker," he said, lowering his voice. "It says here you're not on the entry list for the main seating. There's an overflow room with a screen." I laughed because sometimes that's what my body does when it can't cry. "There must be a mistake," I said gently. "The overflow room is for people who arrive late. I came early. I helped plan this." I stopped myself. I had promised to keep the secret. "Ma'am," he whispered, "I really am sorry. They asked us to check twice for certain names." "Certain?" I asked. He lowered his eyes. Behind him, I saw Victoria standing near the vestibule, one hand on the edge of the guest book, like she owned all the names in it. She watched me with that smile. That was not a smile. Madison stood beside her, perfect in white, perfect in the way you can only be when you think the world is a stage, and you are the show. A bridesmaid whispered into Madison's ear. And Madison's eyes slid to me and away, like I was a smudge on glass. It would have been easy to make a scene. I could have said, "I paid for your flowers. I paid for your cake. I paid for your chairs, your 4-piece quartet, your aisle runner that looks like snow." I could have blown everything open in the doorway with the smell of lilies still fresh. But I did not come for war at the wrong time. I came for truth at the right time. I looked at the usher. "It's okay," I said. "I'll stand." He flinched, as if the word hurt him. "We can't have people standing in the aisle. Fire code." I smiled. "Then give me a seat in the back." He seemed relieved. He led me to a pew near the last row behind a pillar that cut the view like a knife. I sat. I breathed. I told my heart, "Be still." A child, too, rose ahead, swung her feet, and hummed. The organ began to play. Less extreme, right? Just a mother in a back pew watching her only child promise his life to someone who didn't want her in the picture. I could have stayed there and swallowed it whole. But the day did not want to stay small. It wanted to show its teeth. Because the next thing that happened, the thing that ended this first chapter of my story, was a new extreme. It rolled toward me like thunder and broke open the roof. As the music hushed and everyone stood for the bride, an usher in a black suit appeared at the end of my row with 2 security guards I had not noticed before. He leaned in close, the way you lean into a person on a bus when you have to say something you don't want the whole world to hear. "Miss Parker," he said, throat tight, eyes full of shame that again did not belong to him. "I've been asked to escort you outside. Now." And just like that, in the middle of the church, on the day I had paid for in silence, 2 large men stepped into my pew and reached out their hands toward me. The church was silent for half a heartbeat before people started whispering. I could hear my name ripple through the rows like wind over dry leaves. Why would she need to leave? What did she do? She's his mother, right? But none of that mattered. All I could see were the 2 men in black suits walking toward me. Their hands were open, polite, but the message was clear. I was being escorted out. The world tilted a little. I clutched my bag against my stomach as if it were armor. The priest's mouth hung open in confusion. Nate turned his head, just slightly, and I saw the boy I raised, the same boy who once ran barefoot through our kitchen with peanut butter on his chin, now frozen in disbelief, standing beside a woman who was about to rip his family apart. Madison didn't even flinch. Her painted lips held that same perfect smile, the one that looked like it had been carved into her face. I stood up slowly. The hem of my navy dress brushed against the polished floor. I wanted to say something, anything, but when pain is that deep, words don't always come. They sit heavy in your throat until silence becomes the only language you can speak. "Ma'am, please," one of the guards murmured. He looked young enough to be Nate's friend. His voice cracked on the word, "Please." "It's okay," I whispered. "I'm going." The aisle felt longer than it was. Heads turned, phones came out. I heard a few camera shutters, because why not, right? A scandal at a wedding is always better than the vows. And then, before I reached the exit, a voice boomed through the microphone, the priest's voice, shaking, angry. "Stop. No one leaves. Sit down." The guards froze. The whispers died. The priest walked down from the altar, his white robes catching the light. "Before we proceed with this ceremony," he said, his voice trembling but fierce, "there is something every person in this church deserves to hear. Especially you, Madison." Her eyes widened. The priest turned toward the congregation. This wedding was paid for in full. Every petal, every chair, every decoration, every plate of food. And it was not paid for by the Whitfield family. The sound that came next was not human. It was shock, disbelief, gasps colliding with murmurs until the entire room felt like it was vibrating. Victoria's smile shattered first. Charles's hand gripped the pew so tight his knuckles turned white. Madison looked at her parents, confusion flickering in her eyes, confusion that twisted quickly into panic. The priest continued, his voice firm. "It was paid for by Linda Parker, the groom's mother." A scream. A cry. Someone dropped a bouquet. I didn't move. Madison's face drained of color. That's not possible, she stammered. My parents, The priest raised a hand. All receipts, all invoices, all transfers went through the planner's account, at Mrs. Parker's request. She wanted to remain anonymous until today. The church erupted. Guests stood. Phones lit up. Whispers turned to shouts. My name was everywhere. And my son, my beautiful son, turned toward me with tears in his eyes. Mom, he whispered. But before I could speak, Madison snapped. Why would you do that? She screamed, her voice sharp enough to cut the air. Are you trying to humiliate me? Is this your little moment? Her voice cracked, raw and shaking. You couldn't just stay in your place, could you? You had to make it about you. I took a deep breath. My heart was racing, but my voice came out calm, steady. Madison, I said quietly, I wasn't trying to embarrass you. I did this because I wanted my son to start his marriage without debt. I wanted peace for both of you. Peace, she spat. You bought your way into our wedding. The crowd gasped again. I smiled sadly. No, dear, I bought your freedom. You didn't even know you were borrowing it. Her mother stood up, trembling with fury. This is absurd. You're lying. There's no way. But before she could finish, Brooke, the wedding planner, rose from her seat near the front. She held a folder in her hand, thick, worn, marked with sticky notes and signatures. I can confirm everything, she said, voice steady. Every single bill was covered by Mrs. Parker. Quietly, on time, with love. Madison's hand flew to her mouth. Her father sank back into his chair. The priest looked around. Perhaps, he said, this ceremony should pause for reflection. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I saw the Whitfields for what they really were, small people wrapped in large pride. I turned to leave, but Nate's hand caught mine. Mom, he whispered, voice shaking, I didn't know. I know, sweetheart, I said softly. That's why I didn't tell you. He looked at Madison, then back at me. I don't even know what to say. Don't say anything. I told him. Just choose who you want to be now. And then I walked out of the church, this time not because I was told to, but because I had finally said everything I needed to without speaking another word. Outside, the wind was cool, and the sky had softened into a gentle gray. I sat on the steps, my heart heavy, but strangely free. For years I had carried guilt for being poor, guilt for being loud, guilt for never fitting into rooms like that. But today, for once, they had to face the truth. Class can't be bought, but character can't be faked. Inside, chaos still brewed, voices shouting panic. I didn't look back, because the real storm hadn't even started yet. That came later, when Nate found out what Madison had said behind closed doors the night before the wedding. The next day, the story of what happened at the church was already everywhere. Someone had recorded it. The moment the priest revealed my name, the screams, Madison's outburst. It was on Facebook, TikTok, and even local news pages with captions like, "Bride insults groom's mother, then learns she paid for everything." I didn't want fame. I didn't want revenge to trend. But truth has a way of finding a stage. Still, what happened next wasn't about social media. It was about what my son found out that night. The secret Madison had been hiding even before the wedding. That evening, after the disaster, I stayed in my small apartment. The navy dress still hung over the chair, wrinkled and tired like me. I hadn't heard from Nate since I left the church. My phone stayed silent, except for a few texts from people who had been at the wedding. "Linda, are you okay? You did the right thing. They deserve that." I didn't reply. It was around 8 p.m. when I finally heard a knock on my door. When I opened it, Nate was standing there. His tie was gone, his shirt wrinkled, and his face looked like he'd aged 5 years in one day. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded. He walked in and stood there, looking around like he'd never been in that little living room before. The air felt thick. "Mom," he began, voice trembling, "I'm sorry. For everything. For not standing up when she said those things. For letting it go that far. I should have." I stopped him gently. "You were caught in the middle, Nate. Love makes people blind. You just didn't see what she was until she showed everyone." He ran a hand through his hair and sighed. "It's worse than that, Mom. There's something I found out after you left." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" He sat down on the couch, elbows on his knees. "I went to the bridal suite after you walked out. I wanted to check on Madison. I thought maybe she was just overwhelmed, you know? But when I got there," he stopped, took a shaky breath. "She wasn't alone." I froze. "Who was with her?" He stared at the floor. "Her ex. The one she said she blocked months ago. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding her hand." I felt my heart drop like a stone in water. "She was crying," he continued, "and she said she only went through with the wedding because her parents pushed her, that she didn't really love me. She said it was a mistake." Silence filled the room, the kind that burns more than it comforts. "What did you do?" I whispered. "I walked out. I didn't say a word. I just left." He rubbed his eyes. The priest was right. We needed reflection. But what she needed was reality. I moved closer to him and placed my hand on his shoulder. "I know it hurts, Nate, but sometimes God exposes people before they can destroy you completely." He looked up, eyes red. "She called you an embarrassment. She called me weak. And all this time, you were the one making everything possible." I shook my head. "No, son, I just wanted you to have a beautiful beginning. But if that beginning had to be built on lies, then maybe it's good it ended before it began." The next morning, I went to work at the diner, like always. News vans were parked outside for a while, but they left when I didn't give interviews. People came in whispering, pretending not to stare. By afternoon, Nate walked in, not in a suit, not broken, but calm. He sat at the counter, ordered coffee, and smiled weakly. They called off the wedding. He said quietly. I looked at him, surprised. I thought that was obvious. "No, Mom. Officially, the Whitfields tried to negotiate after everything. Said they could still make it work privately, reschedule, control the narrative." He gave a short laugh. I told them I wasn't interested in controlling the narrative. I was interested in peace. I nodded slowly. "That's my boy." He sipped his coffee, then looked at me again. "They offered to pay me back for everything. I told them to keep their money. The only thing I want back is my dignity." For the first time in days, I smiled. "You finally sound like the man I raised." He smiled too, but then his expression darkened. "Mom, there's more. You remember how Madison kept saying the Whitfields paid for everything?" "Yes. She used your money to show off. They told people they funded it, but they used your generosity as a prop for their reputation." I stared at him. "So they lied to the guests?" He nodded. "Completely. Her mom even told people they donated money to help your side of the family attend." I exhaled sharply. Wow, some people lie so well, they start to believe it themselves. Nate's eyes hardened. "I'm not letting it end there." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I'm not seeking revenge," he said, "but I am going to make sure everyone knows what really happened, every detail." I sighed. "Be careful, Nate. Revenge can poison your peace." He smiled faintly. "It's not revenge, Mom. It's closure." 2 days later, Madison posted a long message on social media trying to explain the incident. She wrote that it was a misunderstanding, that she had no idea about the payment, and that the stress of the event caused her to act out of character. People weren't buying it. The video of her yelling at me was too clear, too sharp, too real. Comments flooded her page. Out of character? You humiliated his mother. She didn't act out of character. She revealed it. Imagine insulting the person who paid for your wedding. By the end of the week, she turned off her comments. Her family stopped answering calls. And Nate, he quietly went back to work, head held high. But something in me still felt unsettled, because Madison wasn't the only one with secrets. Brooke, the planner, called me one evening. Her voice was hesitant. "Mrs. Parker, there's something you should know. Something that didn't come up before the wedding." My pulse quickened. "What is it?" She hesitated. The Whitfields requested one special clause in the contract, one that was hidden in the additional notes. If the wedding had gone through, you wouldn't have been acknowledged in any of the documentation. They planned to have everything transferred under their family foundation after the event. I froze. "You mean—" "They were going to erase your name completely," she said softly, "as if your contribution never existed." For a long time, I said nothing. Then I smiled, bitter and slow. Guess God had other plans. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about everything. The humiliation, the whispers, the gasps, the screams. And strangely, I didn't feel defeated. I felt free, because the same people who tried to erase me ended up exposing themselves. And even though the story had ended for most people, I knew something they didn't. Revenge wasn't over yet, because Madison wasn't done. And the next time she showed up at my door, she wasn't wearing white. She was wearing black. It was a gray Saturday morning, the kind that smelled like rain and regret. I was sitting by the window with a cup of coffee when I saw the black car pull up in front of my apartment. The engine idled for a moment before shutting off. At first, I thought it might be Nate, but then I saw her, Madison. She stepped out slowly, dressed head to toe in black. Black coat, black heels, black sunglasses, even though the sky was dull and empty. Her once glossy blonde hair hung limp, and her skin looked pale, almost ghostly. She wasn't the same woman who had stood in that church weeks ago, barking orders and smiling like a queen. For a second, I thought she might walk past. But then she started toward my door. 3 knocks. Soft, hesitant. I didn't move right away. I just stared at the door and listened to the sound of her breathing faintly through the wood. Finally, I opened it. Her eyes were red, makeup smudged like she'd been crying for hours. "Mrs. Parker," she whispered, "can I come in?" Every part of me wanted to say no, but the mother in me, the part that still believed in forgiveness, stepped aside. I opened the door wider. "Come in." She walked in slowly, her heels clicking against the floor like small apologies. When she sat down on the edge of the couch, she clasped her trembling hands together. "I don't even know where to start," she said, her voice shaking. "Everything's fallen apart." I didn't answer. I just looked at her. "My parents," she continued, "cut me off completely. After the video went viral, their company's board forced my father to step down. My mother won't even speak to me. Reporters followed us for days. I had to move out." She took off her sunglasses and met my eyes. "I lost everything, Mrs. Parker. Everything." I stayed silent for a long moment. Then I said quietly, "You didn't lose everything. You lost your illusion of control." Tears filled her eyes. "I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I treated you horribly. I said things I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," I interrupted gently. "You meant them. You just didn't think they'd echo this loud." She flinched at that. "I was proud," she whispered. "I thought money and class made me better. But when the priest said your name, when everyone turned and looked at me, I realized who I was. I folded my arms. And who's that? She swallowed hard. Someone who doesn't deserve your son. That silence between us felt heavier than any words could fill. After a moment, I sighed. You came here for forgiveness. Yes, she said, voice trembling. I've been seeing a counselor. I've been trying to make things right. I know Nate will never take me back, but I can't sleep at night knowing how much I hurt you. Her tears fell fast now. I ruined my own life, and I deserved it. But I just want you to know I'm sorry. I looked at her, this woman who had once looked down on me like I was a stain on her perfect wedding photos. And for the first time, I didn't see a monster. I saw a child who had never been taught humility until life forced her to learn it the hard way. Madison, I said softly, you hurt me more than you'll ever understand. You humiliated me in front of strangers. But forgiveness isn't something you earn by saying sorry. It's something you start by changing who you are. She nodded slowly, crying harder. I'm trying. I swear. Good, I said. Then prove it. Not to me, to yourself. She wiped her eyes. Can I at least apologize to Nate? I shook my head. Not yet. He's healing. Give him time. Right now, your presence will only reopen the wound. She looked defeated. Okay. She stood clutching her bag. Before she reached the door, she turned to me again. You're a better woman than I could ever be, she said. And one day, if I ever earn it, I hope you'll let me say thank you, not for the wedding, but for showing me what grace looks like. Then she left. For a while, life quieted down. Nate started over, poured his focus into work, and began volunteering at a local youth center. I went back to my routine, the diner, the regulars, my quiet mornings with coffee and peace. But peace doesn't always mean stillness. Sometimes it's the calm before another truth rises. One afternoon, I was at work when a man walked in. Tall, slim, wearing a dark gray suit. He had that corporate politeness you could spot a mile away. Are you Mrs. Parker? He asked. Yes. He handed me an envelope. This is from the Whitfields' estate. I'm their attorney. My stomach tightened. What's this about? He nodded toward the envelope. I think you'll want to read it. He left before I could ask anything else. I opened it. Inside was a letter on embossed paper. The handwriting wasn't familiar. It was formal, typed cold. Mrs. Parker, in light of recent events and the public embarrassment that has affected both families, the Whitfield estate would like to offer a settlement. We have been made aware that you funded the wedding in full. Enclosed is a cashier's check reimbursing all expenses, along with an additional amount as an apology for the distress caused. We trust this will close the matter permanently. Whitfield Family Trust. I stared at the check inside, $180,000. For a moment, I felt dizzy. That money could change everything for me, my home, my job, my future. But then I thought about what it meant. They weren't paying out of remorse. They were paying to erase guilt, to rewrite history one last time with money. I folded the letter, slid the check back inside, and wrote 2 words across the front of the envelope in black ink. Return to sender. That night, Nate came over again. I told him everything about Madison's visit, the check, the apology. He was quiet for a while. Then he said something that made me proud. Mom, he said softly, you always told me that kindness doesn't make you weak. I didn't really understand it until now. You could have cashed that check. You could have yelled at Madison, but you didn't. You didn't fight to prove who you are. You just were. I smiled. Son, revenge isn't about hurting back. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is showing people they never had power over you to begin with. He nodded, his eyes soft. I get that now. But just when I thought our story had settled into peace, the phone rang again, a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a trembling voice said, Mrs. Parker, this is Father Thomas. You need to come to the hospital. It's Madison. My heart stopped. What happened? I whispered. She was in an accident, he said, and before she lost consciousness, she kept asking for you. I don't remember much about the drive to the hospital, just the sound of rain smacking the windshield and my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My heart raced the entire way, and my mind kept repeating the same question over and over. Why would Madison ask for me? When I arrived, the emergency lights reflected off the wet pavement like red and blue ghosts. The air smelled of antiseptic and rain. I rushed through the sliding doors, still in my diner uniform, my shoes squeaking against the floor. At the front desk, a nurse looked up. "Ma'am, you're here for?" "Madison Whitfield," I said, breathless. "Someone called me, said she asked for me." The nurse's expression softened. "Room 214. She's stable now, but it was close." Stable. That word hit me like a fragile promise. I walked down the hallway, past beeping machines and quiet conversations. The hospital always had that eerie stillness, the kind that makes you feel both safe and scared at once. When I pushed open the door to room 214, I saw her. Madison lay there, pale and fragile, her right arm in a sling, small bruises on her face. The strong, proud woman who once barked orders at florists and planners now looked like a frightened child. "Mrs. Parker," she whispered when she saw me. Her voice was soft, cracked, but filled with something I hadn't heard from her before, humility. I sat down beside her bed. "I'm here," I said quietly. She blinked back tears. "You didn't have to come." "I know," I said, "but you asked." She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "There was an accident, drunk driver. I was leaving a counseling session. They said I might have died if someone hadn't pulled me out." "Who pulled you out?" I asked. She swallowed. "A stranger. They didn't even leave their name." I nodded slowly. Sometimes grace comes from unexpected hands. After a pause, she looked down at her blanket and whispered, "Mrs. Parker, I've been thinking about everything. The wedding my parents, Nate, you. I realized something after that car flipped. I could have died, and all anyone would have remembered was how cruel I was." Her voice broke. "I don't want that to be my story." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "Then rewrite it," I said. "Start over. It's never too late." She looked up at me, desperate. "Do you think people can change?" I reached for her hand. "They can, but only if they stop pretending and start healing." We sat there in silence for a while, just two women who had once stood on opposite sides of pride and pain. After a moment, she said softly, "I sent that check. My parents didn't know I did it. It wasn't from them. It was from me." I blinked. "What?" She nodded weakly. "I used what little I had left from my trust. I didn't want you to think I was trying to buy forgiveness. I just wanted to make it right somehow." My throat tightened. "Madison, I didn't cash it. I sent it back." Her eyes widened. "You did." I smiled faintly. "Some debts aren't meant to be paid with money. You can't fix what you broke that way. But what you're doing now, that's worth more." She started crying quietly, shoulders shaking. "I wish I could tell Nate I'm sorry." "You will?" I said softly. "When the time's right." Over the next few days, I visited her again and again. Not out of pity, out of purpose. Each time I saw her, she was less like the woman from the church and more like someone trying to rebuild her soul brick by brick. She started volunteering at the same youth center where Nate helped, not to run into him, but to do something good without expecting applause. It was strange, watching her transformation. The world had already forgotten her scandal, but she hadn't forgotten the lesson. One evening, she asked, "Do you think Nate will ever forgive me?" I thought carefully before answering. Forgiveness isn't always a door people open for you. Sometimes you have to build one yourself. Uh, Months passed. Spring came, then summer. Life started to feel normal again. Nate had grown into his peace. Stronger, calmer, wiser. He was dating again, carefully, quietly. Nothing serious yet, but I could see joy returning to his eyes. Then one afternoon, I came home from work and found an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a handwritten note in delicate cursive. Mrs. Parker, I wanted to tell you this in person, but I thought writing it would be easier. I'm leaving Ohio. I've been accepted into a community outreach program in Colorado, working with women who've survived emotional abuse and humiliation. I don't know if I'll ever see you or Nate again, but I'll never forget what you taught me. You didn't humiliate me, Mrs. Parker. You freed me from who I was pretending to be. Thank you for that. Madison. I folded the letter and smiled through tears. People talk about revenge like it's a sharp thing, something that cuts and bleeds. But real revenge? It's quieter. It's watching the people who hurt you finally learn the lessons life was trying to teach them. Lessons they once laughed at. It's peace. A few weeks later, Nate came by for dinner. We laughed, we talked, and for the first time in a long time, there was no tension in the air. When he was leaving, he stopped at the door and said, "Mom." "Yes." He smiled. "You know, if Madison ever writes to me, I think I'll answer. Not to go back. Just to let her know I forgive her." I nodded. "That's good, son. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you." He hugged me tight before leaving. And as I stood there in the quiet watching the sunset spill through the curtains, I realized something. What happened in that church wasn't just my humiliation. It was the seed of every transformation that came after. Madison found her humanity. Nate found his strength. And the woman once called an embarrassment, found my dignity was never lost. It was simply waiting for the world to see it. But little did I know one final truth about that wedding still hadn't come out. Because someone else, someone I had trusted deeply, had known everything from the beginning and said nothing. It had been almost a year since that unforgettable day. The wedding that wasn't had become a faded whisper in the town. A story that used to draw gasps, but now only got quiet nods and half-remembered details. Life, for once, was calm. Nate had just accepted a promotion. I had been offered a small manager's share at the diner. Even Madison's letter felt like a chapter closed. Until one afternoon, an envelope came in the mail, no return address. Just my name in neat handwriting across the front. I almost threw it away, but something about the way the ink pressed into the paper made my heart beat a little faster. Inside, there was no letter, just a single printed photo. It was a picture of Madison and me sitting together in her hospital room, holding hands. Only someone had drawn a red circle around the corner of the photo, around a reflection. In that small, shiny window behind us was Brooke, the wedding planner. Her expression wasn't warm. It wasn't kind. She wasn't looking at us. She was looking at her phone, smiling. And behind the photo was a single note written in typewriter font. She knew, from the beginning. My stomach dropped. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, staring at the photo. Brooke, the woman I had trusted with every secret payment, every detail of the wedding, every tear I'd tried to hide. The one who promised to keep my identity confidential. Could she have been the one who told the Whitfields everything before the ceremony? Was that how Madison knew to humiliate me so confidently, without fear of her secret being exposed? The thought made my skin crawl. I didn't want to believe it, but the timing made too much sense. So I did what I always do when I need clarity. I prayed first. Then I went to find the truth. That evening, I drove to Brooke's office. It was a quiet corner building with gold lettering on the window, Weddings by Brooke and Company. Inside, everything was still polished, white roses, glossy brochures, smiling couples on display. But when she saw me walk in, the color drained from her face. "Mrs. Parker," she said slowly, "this is a surprise." "I bet it is," I replied, setting the photo on her desk. "Want to tell me what this means?" Her eyes darted to the photo. She froze. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "It came in the mail," I said, "with a note that said you knew everything." She looked away, took a shaky breath, then sat down. "Linda, please. It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," I said sharply. She rubbed her forehead. "I didn't tell them everything. I swear I didn't. But, they found out," she said quietly. "A week before the wedding, Madison's mother cornered me after a vendor meeting. She said she knew someone was covering payments anonymously. She offered me a bonus if I confirmed it was you. I said I couldn't. So what happened? She threatened to sue my company, said she'd ruin my reputation if I didn't cooperate. I panicked. Her eyes filled with tears. I told her you had covered the bills, but that you wanted it kept quiet. I thought she'd stay silent. I thought it would make her kinder. I laughed bitterly. You thought telling a proud woman that the mother of the groom paid for her daughter's wedding would make her kinder. Brooke looked down. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. I stood there in silence. My hands were trembling, not from rage, but from disappointment. "I trusted you," I said. "I put my dignity in your hands, and you sold it for comfort." Her tears fell fast now. "I didn't take their money, Linda. I swear I didn't. I refused the bonus. I thought if they knew, maybe they'd behave. I was wrong. I destroyed everything instead." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The ticking clock in her office filled the space between us. Finally, I said, "You could have told me after. You watched me walk out of that church humiliated, and you said nothing." She covered her face with her hands. "I couldn't face you. Every time I tried, I cut her off. You wanted to keep your reputation. You didn't want to be the one who caused the scene." I turned to leave. "Linda, please," she cried. I paused at the door. "I forgave Madison," I said quietly, "but you didn't just betray me. You betrayed trust. That's worse than humiliation." That night, I sat in my car outside my apartment, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't anger anymore. It was grief. Grief for how naive I'd been. Grief for every time I believed silence was safety. But in that moment, I made a promise to myself: no more quiet suffering. No more shrinking to make others comfortable. The next day, I wrote Brooke a letter. It wasn't cruel. It was honest. "I forgive you, Brooke, but you will carry your lesson the same way I carried my pain. You taught me something too, that not every betrayal comes with shouting. Some come with polite smiles and good intentions. I hope you never betray another woman who trusts you, because next time she might not be as kind as me." Months later, Nate and I attended a small community fundraiser. It was for single mothers, a cause close to my heart. As we were leaving, I saw a familiar face on one of the volunteer posters. Madison. Her smile looked real this time. She had cut her hair short, wore no makeup, and her arms were around two young girls holding art supplies. "She's doing good work," Nate said softly. I nodded. People can change, but not everyone chooses to. He smiled faintly. "You did." I laughed. "I didn't change, son. I just finally stopped hiding who I was." That night, when I got home, I took out an old shoebox from the top shelf of my closet. Inside were the receipts, the letters, the newspaper clippings, and the single photo that had started it all. I tore them all in half because I didn't need proof anymore. I had peace, and peace, after all the pain, was the best revenge I could have ever asked for. Epilogue. Months later, a plain envelope arrived again. This time, the handwriting was familiar. It was Madison's. Mrs. Parker, I heard about Brooke. I wanted to tell you that when I started my outreach center, I named it after you the Parker House, a place where people learn to start again. I thought you should know. Thank you for teaching me that grace can be louder than revenge. With love, Madison. I smiled through tears, folded the letter gently, and placed it by my Bible. Because that was it. That was the end. I hadn't just gotten revenge. I'd started a ripple, one that turned pain into purpose, shame into strength, and humiliation into healing. And that, my dear, is the story of how the mother who was called an embarrassment became the legacy everyone wanted to remember.